This is the Library Marketing Book Club. We are really happy to have the author of our most recent book that we read here, Ann Handley. So Ann Handley, she's a Wall Street Journal bestselling author, speaks worldwide about businesses igniting tangible results with their marketing, and is a digital marketing pioneer, chief content officer of Marketing Props, which many of you may have heard about, leading marketing education company with more than 600,000 subscribers, and best-selling books include Everybody Writes, the one that we read, and Content Rules. So Ann is a LinkedIn influencer, 420,000 followers on Twitter, lives in Boston with the cutest dogs, including Littlest August on Instagram, which we follow, and is just fantastic. Ann is an E.B. White superfan, so fan of reading, loves dogs, works in a tiny house office, which houses her vintage typewriter collection. So we are so pleased to have here Ann Handley. Ann, welcome.
Thank you so much, Chris. Boy, you know, we should have planned this better because I could have been calling out, like, I've got Charlotte's Web right here.
Very nice.
Typewriters. What else do I have? Fireplace.
Yeah. Fireplace, yes. You have a tiny fireplace.
Tiny fireplace, yeah.
And books that are color coordinated, you may notice.
Yes, thank you so much. You know, it's funny that you mention that because I've discovered that there's two types of people in the world. And I know what you're thinking, oh, like, you know, Trump supporters and people, but no. People who believe in rainbow bookshelves like mine and people who don't. And library people in particular are very opinionated about this. So.
Yes, they are. I bet we're going to get a couple of comments on this video, but that's okay.
All right, now, I just need to explain, though, and the reason why they are like this is because I'm in my tiny house office, and I built this tiny house office as I call it tiny house office because when I call it a tiny house, people think I live in a tiny house. I do not. I live in a regular sized house, but I have a tiny house office in my backyard. So all that to say, I built this as a place for me. And now since COVID and coronavirus, my tiny house is now subjected to the criticism of the internet, you know, when people are looking at my Zoom background like this. I don't know. I just thought the reason that they look like this, you can blame Corona because I needed something that was more visually appealing. And so whether you're a lover of the rainbow bookshelf or a hater, you have to agree that the aesthetic for a Zoom background is pleasing.
Yeah.
The thing is, I actually can find books. Like people say to me all the time, well, how do you actually find a book if it's not cataloged by, you know, in your world, Dewey Decimal? Because I know that's like, I'm kidding. I know you don't use Dewey Decimal, but you know, I have a visual of what a book looks like. And then I go, oh, I remember Habits of like Charles Duhigg's book. It's yellow. I remember the cover. It's yellow. So anyway,
that's how I organize my iPhone. I have all my icons in little groups by color because I know like Starbucks is a green app and Target's a red app, and yeah, it's super easy to find. Yep.
All right. Well, that's pathological, Chris. This makes sense. Pathological. What's wrong with you? Nobody does that.
That's news to me. Holy cow.
Wow. Chris, if that is your real name.
I tell you, try it. It works. It's very easy to find. So, thank you. Yeah. So, Angela, I think was going to, so Angela was the one that selected this book, and it would be great, Angela, for you to share a little bit about your first experiences and why this came to us.
Sure. No problem. Well, the first time I heard Ann Handley's voice I had to go back and look. It was the fall of 2014. You were a guest on a podcast. I don't remember which one it was, but you were talking about writing for marketing. And I had just left 20 some years as a broadcast journalist and was now working in the library and having to do a different kind of writing and was looking for some kind of advice on that transition. Then I saw you at Content Marketing World, attended one of your sessions. And as soon as I left that conference, I ran back to my library and got an audiobook version of Everybody Writes and devoured it and loved it. It is I still do a lot of the things that I learned in that book, like the process for writing. I talk about ugly first drafts all the time with fellow staff members. So I thought the book is just really easy to digest. It has a lot of actionable information in it, and I thought it would be a really great read for the group. Turns out it was. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'm glad that we were able to share your book.
Angela, it's funny because it's like I have a photo of you and me. I must have been the first time we met at Content Marketing World in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yep.
And I tried to find it before our chat today, but because I don't have my apps organized by color, I couldn't even find the photo app anywhere. So,
well, don't you worry, Anne, because guess what? I found it and sent it to Chris last week, so he's got it. He can post it with the video.
Yeah, I know literally I have 10,000 photos on my phone, and it's like scroll. I couldn't find it. But that's my memory of connecting with you. So I didn't know that you had actually heard me on a podcast first. I thought that was the first time that you and I sort of became aware of one another. So
Nope. I've been fangirling for a while.
Well, I have a deep appreciation for libraries. You know my backstory with libraries, right?
Yes, and you were a guest blog post author on my blog as well on superlibrarymarketing.com. So talked about that for a bit. Yeah,
I forgot all about that. Yeah. So since childhood, it's like libraries have been part of my world forever. And there was a time where we probably talked about this already, but there was a time where I worked in a library, and I just thought this is actually a really nice place to work, and I really enjoyed it. But anyway, it became not a career path for me, but I really enjoyed my time there, and it was just, I don't know. I have such a fondness for libraries, and one of the things that I do when pre-COVID times when when I used to travel a lot, I was on the road. I don't know, like at least once or twice a week during the high seasons of the fall and the spring during the speaking season. And one of my things is I realized I was going to these cities all the time and never really seeing them at all. And so it became, for about a year, it became my thing where I'd go to a city and I'd find the closest library and I would walk to it. And because to me, it's such a center of a community that you get a sense of what a community is all about when you go visit the library. So I have a very, very fond place in my heart for libraries. So.
That's amazing.
That's fantastic. And yes, we were aware of that when we were reading the book. It definitely, and it absolutely made a big difference to the group that was reading it. So something that we talked about, Anne, was your you don't write by committee, right? So, that's one of your big advices, don't write by committee. Something that somebody asked was, what about when you have a micromanager, when you have somebody who wants to kind of really control that? So you're not exactly writing by committee, but this isn't your writing buddy either. This is somebody who's, wants to kind of control your writing. So how can you manage that from, how can people handle that so it doesn't become a lackluster, complex mess?
Yeah, and do you ever notice like the people who are very controlling with other people's writing are typically worse writers than the actual
Right.
As soon as I nodded, I realized this video might get viewed by somebody for whom nobody that I work for right now is a bad writer, but yeah.
I'm just saying. I think that people like that are really hard to deal with, but I think the best thing you can do is preempt any sort of overstepping into your own writing by being super clear right from the draft standpoint. Like, for example, if you're writing on behalf of somebody, really understanding, all right, what are the parameters of this piece? What are we working on? What do we want this to say? And make sure that you get lots of input prior to sitting down to write, because if there's anything that I hate, and I'm sure all of you too, it's like writing something and then having it come back with, well, I don't like that, you should have done this, you should have done that, right? So it's much easier, I think, to preempt that kind of feedback by trying to get as much feedback as you can up front, control as much as you can up front, get as much input before you sit down to write. And then if it still is coming back to you with, with that sort of controlling mindset, then I think the next thing you can do is make sure that you're pointing out that you're using the language of your audience, right? So very often it comes down to like people get very, very into like word choice and grammar and feeling like they get sort of, squirrely about stuff. But I think it's not about any of that. It's about communicating a way that makes sense and resonates with your audience. And so to the degree to which you can circumvent some of that criticism by making sure you're using the language of your audience and pulling that into whatever you're creating. So those are my two tips for that. But and then just some people are just tough like that, they really are. My heart goes out to you because I've had a boss like that in the past. Not fun.
Yeah. No, thanks.
And this question is kind of related to that. So like one of the things that you talk about in the book in your writing GPS process, which again, I use all the time, is that we're supposed to identify the goal of the piece before we write it. And some of us in the library world sometimes are asked to write things that don't seem to be aligned with the library's overall goal or the library's marketing goal. So do you have some advice for people in those situations? Like if you're being asked to promote something that just seems fun on the surface, like libraries do a lot of videos of themselves doing quirky things, which they think people really love, but it doesn't it's not engaging and maybe it's not aligned with the goal. How do we make sure that libraries are really focused on the goals that they want to accomplish through writing and through marketing?
Yeah, I think the important thing is, and I see that from my own library too, I'm sort of laughing to myself that there's almost like an insidery feel sometimes to my own community's library newsletter. It's I'm on their list and I get it every week. And I'm on it because to me, it represents the kind of heart of a community, I mean, just like I said, when I would go to a new city and walk around, I think that it's very true of my own community too. I used to be on the board of directors of my own library. And one of the things that we used to talk about all the time was how, and this goes back 10 years maybe. We used to talk all the time about how the library itself could almost be a kind of like the local newspaper, in the sense that it's a clearinghouse for so many community programs. Like people use, people in groups, community groups use those event rooms when we could get together. There's lots of different programs going on for children and teens and adults and all kinds of it's just a gathering place. And so when I get the email newsletter now, a lot of those things are happening, but they're all in Zoom rooms like this, But I do notice those little quirky things that you're talking about, and I always have that very exact same thought. I'm always like, that feels like something that a librarian thought was hilarious, and me as being on the other side with both a marketing hat and a community member hat, I'm like, wow, I don't particularly care about that, Yeah. And so I think the important thing is just relentlessly focusing on the people you serve, essentially, and telling their stories. The great thing about libraries is that you don't have the problem that a lot of brands have. There's so many stories within a library. There's so many things happening there. And so, I would think that libraries have the abundance problem, right? It's figuring out what stories can we tell, and thinking about what matters the most to the people in the community. I mean, I just think if there's a quirky story about, I don't know, a dress up day or something like that, which is fun, but can you address it in maybe just a super short way, maybe with a single photo and not a big, blown out article like I saw a few months ago in my own community newsletter.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, that's great. And one other thing quickly we talked about when we were on the book club talking was writing simply. So, you talk about writing simply and it seems very obvious, but we don't do it, but we can work at it and write to become more simple. One of the things at libraries is that sometimes there are the expectation, or some people think that there's an expectation that we speak complexly because we're an educational type institution. and so, they think that that's the way, somebody might feel that that's the way that we build our credibility is by speaking complexly. But, I think that you've shown that that's not really true. But how can we maintain our credibility while speaking simply?
Yeah, I think that speaking simply doesn't mean that you're sloppy. And when you speak simply, it doesn't mean that you're using slang or, speaking in memes or emojis or any of that. It can use that if you want. It's up to you. But to me, simply just means being very clear and communicating in a way that makes sense to your audience. And so it just means don't use, like my journalism professor used to say, like never use a $5 word when a 50-cent word will do,
Right.
It's like that fundamental idea.
Yeah.
Unless it's part of your personality and part of your brand.
Right.
And so I guess, to me, it goes back to what is the brand of your library? Every library is not the same as every other library. Like the library in my town is not the same as the library in the next town over. But it's like, yes, even though they kind of play the same role, every community is different. And so to me, it goes back to thinking about your own, doing some brand work.
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds super high-minded, even saying that. I'm cringing a little bit. But basically, it just means like, what is your voice? Like, think it through your visuals, think through your voice. What is it that's consistently you that you can show all across everything you do? I think that like the biggest problem that I see with a lot of institutions, and not just libraries, but I'm just thinking about other institutions that I've worked with or dealt with in the past, is that they feel like they should be a certain way. But especially with a library, because you want it to be open and welcoming and accessible, like that's such a tenet of so many libraries. And all you need to do is think about it from a content standpoint too, from a writing standpoint. You want your words to have that same accessibility and relatability, and you want to have that same sense of community in it, but also with a little bit of you, like a little bit of your brand, a little bit of the library's sort of, what makes you special in one way or another. And I don't know what that is. I think it's going to be different for everybody. And I don't mean go crazy with it, but I mean just to have a sense of, that this feels different than any other library, say newsletter or content or blog post or Instagram post, anything like that,
Oh, that's very helpful. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that really helps a lot because it can get really, you can get really in the weeds, and it's nice to think about that using your voice and speaking simply. So,
yeah, and I was just thinking that just undervalued too is, we talked around it, I guess, around the email newsletter. But I believe so strongly in the ability of an email newsletter, especially in a library context, to really be a powerful marketing tool for your own institution. And libraries, like so many other companies and brands and organizations, they vastly undervalue the power of that. I think that especially in times like this, when we are all kind of disconnected, literally from one another, I think the power of an email newsletter to unite a community, to unite your library, to connect it to your community is just so incredibly powerful. And so I would just challenge every library, if you do nothing else, think through your own email newsletter. Are you proud of it? Does it feel like a rich resource for the community, or is it just kind of does it feel like marketing, And I think for libraries, it's a potentially really powerful way to communicate with your audience because, in so many local communities, the newspaper is not what it once was, right? And so I do think there's an opportunity for libraries to really fill that void and be that sort of community center for so many communities around the country.
Yeah. And for anyone listening to this, if they want a great example of the best newsletter I've ever read, they should sign up for Total Anarchy because it is Anne's bi-weekly newsletter. She sends it out and it is a joy to read, which is what we want people to say when they get our library's newsletter.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I appreciate that advice.
Thank you so much, Angela. It was really generous of you. And I know a lot of people who, when you did this call originally, that I told you I would come to, and then I didn't show up because I'm very rude like that. I'm sorry about that.
You're exceedingly busy.
Oh my God. It's like, I feel bad. I'm so rude because I'm drinking my probiotics, but I literally have not stopped all day. So I apologize for just chugging. I'm trying to just stay hydrated, stay standing. What's again? I was just gonna say something too. Oh, I, I was hoping that you were gonna tell me about like an amazing local library that's doing an amazing newsletter, and I was all excited. And then
Well, I do have a couple of clients, yes, who are doing some amazing work. Yes. Yeah. So I will have to share those examples with the group, but
yeah,
I agree with you, and I love that. I'm going to have to use that. I'll use this recording as backup for when I say it. Like, here's Anne. She's a real expert, and she agrees.
Oh, well, you're an expert too, but yeah, that's nice. I also, there's a number of people who were on that first call who did sign up for my email newsletter. That's what I was trying to say. And so thank you for that, because I appreciate it.
Great. Yeah, so we're running out of time here. You know, we want to make sure to keep you on time for all the other things that you have going on. Just lastly, any any books to recommend, or you have a book coming out, or just what's next? What should we not miss? What's going on? What do you have coming up?
All right. All right. 2 recommendations. First is, and Angela probably knows this, is this book here, Charlotte's Web. Some of you might know. Do you know his work? You might know E.B. White's work. And the reason why I'm mentioning it to you now, and Angela, I don't know if you went to my talk at Content Marketing World about this book a couple of years ago, but the reason why I believe in this book so strongly is it's people think it's a children's book. It is not a children's book, my friends. It is not. It is such a beautiful book. It's such a great story. It's a fast read. It's an easy read. But as marketers, it is a marketing story, because essentially this gal right here, like Charlotte, her job was to basically save this pig's life. And she had to figure out how she was going to create a marketing campaign using words on the web to, I mean, this stuff writes itself, to save this pig's life. And I am an E.B. White super fan, as Chris said, but this book, I'm telling you, is just a fantastic marketing story, essentially. And when you look at it that way, it'll just change your world. So yeah, that is my favorite book of all time, not just because of the marketing thing, but because I am such an E.B. White super fan. So yeah, so that's the first thing. In terms of what else I would say, I have been working on a new book forever. I have been very, very slow with the writing. I thought when things kind of shut down during COVID, I was like, oh, wow, look at all this time in the world I have to write. Well, that has not happened. So yeah, that's been a little bit tricky. All right, I'll share my favorite writing tool with you, which is I've shared this in my newsletter in the past too, but it's a resource that I use when I'm feeling stuck in my writing, and it's a site called Related Words, relatedwords.org. And I don't know if you guys know it, Chris or Angela?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't used it.
I've looked it up, yeah. Because of your newsletter.
It's such a great resource for writers. And the reason why I like it is that, so what you do is it's a very simple website. You type in a word, and it'll serve up all the literally related words, all the words related to that word. And the reason why I like it is because it's not really a thesaurus. I mean, it kind of is, but for me, it just can help me feel unstuck. Like when I'm thinking about when I'm writing, and when I'm getting to that point where I feel like I've used the same words over and over and over again. Like this morning, actually, I used it because I was editing a post for my daughter, and she works at a tech company here in Boston, and I was helping her with a project, and I used the word wonderful like 4 times, and I was like, oh my Lord, what is wrong? So, and it wasn't because I don't know any other words, it's just because I was stuck, I don't know.
Yep.
A bunch of related words, and I found all these other words that mean wonderful, and and are kind of related to it, and it led my mind down a different path. And so, yeah, I find that that's a really useful tool when you're feeling sort of uninspired, to just pop a piece of your copy in there and see what it tosses up. So those are my 2 tips.
That's awesome.
That is wonderful advice. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anne, very much. Angela and I are just so happy to have had this time with you. This is such a thrill for us, and we know it's going to be great for the club. We loved reading the book. We look forward to reading more, and we look forward to following you on your newsletter.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support, of you, Chris and Angela, but just everybody here. So thank you so much. And if I can be of any help to you, feel free to reach out. I'm Ann@AnnHandley.com. Just feel free to ship me a note if you'd like, and if I can help you at all. And I really appreciate Chris and Angela, you just being so flexible. I've had, anyway, just with scheduling this call, so thank you.
No worries. Well, thank you so much. It was lovely to see you again.
Yeah, same here, same here. Okay, stay safe, everyone.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Have a great day. All right, thanks, Anne. Thanks. Bye. Bye.